Okay, welcome back to part 2 of, I guess I'll probably call it something like What Drummers Do for Non-Drummers or something like that. I assume you've watched part 1 before watching this. If you haven't, please do, because I'm not going to say all that again. It took me a while the first time. Alright, so I'm just going to carry on where I left off. The next thing that I wrote down that I realized I need to talk about is what's called independence. And independence is crucial for drummers. Particularly on a drum set. Remember, you've got two hands, you're using both the snare drum, which is kind of, the bass drum, they keep the beat, and then you have this ride for a groove. All that together creates a groove or some kind of a ride, some kind of a beat. And your hands, you're working cymbals, you're working toms, you're working the same drum, you're working the snare drum with both the right and the left hand, you're working the hi-hat often with the left hand but mostly with the right hand. So you have two hands, 2 feet, and if you're singing you have your mouth. And you could even argue you have your eyes, because you need to make contact, especially with your bass player, so that you keep a tight rhythm section going. You can do it by ear, but when you're in a good band and the band's been playing, you get to where even if someone screws up completely, and our band did that too frequently, we would cut the chorus in half by accident. One person would, and the others have to recover, and they have to do so without letting the audience know that it was a mistake, and that's the trick. And that's half the fun of it, to be honest, when you screw up like that. You can turn it into something fun. If you're good at improvising and ad-libbing, there's an opportunity there as well. But independence is the ability to work this hand, this leg, that leg, and your mouth, and perhaps your eyes, and your brain, all independently at the same time. Now, if you've seen a pianist, you might marvel at how, like that Charlie Brown song, Linus and Lucy, do 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 do, while they're going do 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 do. That amazes me that pianists can do that, keyboard players, that they can move their hands independently and play two totally different melodies. Boggles my mind, and yet here I am thinking about what I do, and it's like, well, I do it with 4 limbs and a mouth. I'm not the best at it, I'll admit. I'm not to the quality of a concert pianist on my instrument, but I was pretty good before this, but and I'll play some examples on the stereo here to let you hear what I'm talking about, but it's amazing. When you see somebody who has independence, let's say they can play 3/4 time with their left hand, and they can play 4/4 with with the right hand, 3/4 time, which is basically like a waltz. 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1. I can't even do it. And then they play 4/4 time with their left hand, and then they've got some 6/8 thing going with their feet, and then they're singing just kind of free form. That is absolutely outrageous. The amount of control that person has over their body puts an Olympian to shame. And I've always said that there is no better exercise than drum set. Because when you get cooking on a drum set, you've got everything moving, the blood is flowing fast and furious, you're working your upper body in particular, you're just working all these muscles. The only bad thing I guess about it is that since you're seated, you're losing a bit of circulation in the butt. Your rear end tends to get numb if you're sitting in that stool for too long. You got to have a comfortable stool, or throne is what we call it. But what a really good drummer does is among the most impressive things I have seen anybody do in terms of mastering some kind of a skill or a craft. And that's why I liked drums from the very beginning. When I was really young in school, I was in grade school, maybe kindergarten, 1st grade, and I saw the high school drum line march by, and they just went by. Whatever they were doing, and they just went by one time. I was so impressed with what I saw. The way those guys are all working in total unison, just everyone in a line, just dun 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 dun. Ooh, ah! I was so impressed I had to learn drums right away. at that young age. And I've remained that impressed all along. I'm not the best drummer. I wasn't the best drummer. And this is the next thing I want to get into after independence. And this is also for drummers, and I'm sure there's some drummers watching, and this is for drummers, especially new drummers, or drummers who just feel, as you look at these people around you who are so outrageously good, you feel like dirt. Let me try to pick you up a bit, because, you know, and I'm going to get into this a bit when I talk about famous drummers, but don't get down on yourself. You know, learn the techniques that you can, practice them, put in the effort you have to. If you're going to go to the Olympics to run a race that takes, 30 seconds to run, you're going to spend 5 years, hours every single day for 5 years preparing for that 30-second run. Well, you got to do the same thing with drums. But given that fact, wherever your level is at the time, it isn't about being fast. You don't have to be, playing like a machine gun. You don't have to do that. You don't have to have all this technique. I don't. I mean, you don't have to be able to do what these jazz players do and these phenomenal people with these independents, their ability to work all these limbs independently. Take what you have and get yourself into the band that benefits most from what you do well. And make sure you jive really well with and gel with the people in the band. Like I said, so that as you just look at each other, you don't even have to make a facial expression. You just look in each other's eyes and you know exactly what's going on. You know where you're taking the song. You know what's going on. You're communicating to them, I'm going to speed this up. We're going too slow. I'm going to slow it down. Okay? You can... I feel like the guitarist is getting out of tune. We've got to communicate that to him so he can tune his guitar. You just figure out ways to communicate these things non-verbally. Get into a band where you can do that and where what you can do benefits that band. And that's what I did. I've really been in only 2 bands. One was a surf band, and the other one was what you call a classic rock band, and we took a lot of those old kind of Herman's Hermits, and we turned them into something like The Who. I knocked my fan over. Because I tend to play kind of like a combination between Keith Moon, John Bonham from Led Zeppelin, and Neil Peart from Rush. I kind of combine those 3 for the most part. And in those bands, I was exactly what they needed. There were drummers who were better than me. There's a lot of drummers who were better than me, but I was perfect for the band. They were perfect for me. Their grasp of the instrument, their appreciation for the style of music we were playing, their passion for writing and composing and arranging was the same as mine. And that's why what we did was so good. Even though in that last band I was in, the classic rock band, the guitarist was very impressive for a variety of reasons. Tell you about someday, but very impressive what he did. But the bass player in particular, I have never played with such a good bass player. He was phenomenal. And it was just thrilling to be part of the rhythm section with him. It was just a thrill. There's nothing like it. Nothing feels as good, especially when you're on stage and you get the crowd going by what you're doing together as a team. Teamwork. Way early on in my video series here, when I started, I was talking about business at the beginning of this channel. When I started it, how not to do business, one of the things I talked about was teamwork. And that's a perfect example of the beauty of teamwork. So even if your skill isn't there, don't worry about it. Just master what you can, drill it so that it's second nature, try to add on what you can, try to throw in things like vocals and something different. Listen to different genres of music. Even if you're a heavy metal head, don't just sit in heavy metal. Go listen to jazz and blues and funk and country. Go listen to these things, because you're gonna see what you like, and you're gonna hear techniques, and you're gonna integrate it, and you're gonna come up with something original. Now, let me talk about some of the famous drummers out there, and you're gonna find as you look at them that some of them are not, by any stretch of the imagination, the quote best drummers in the world. They're just not. But they're perfect for their bands. Prime among them is probably Charlie Watts with the Rolling Stones. Anybody who talks about Charlie Watts always says the man keeps the most solid beat imaginable. And they're absolutely right. What's that one song? Do 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 do. Is it not nothing I can say. See, I lost my voice. I used to be able to sing falsetto. Now I'll never do it again, but making a happy video here. So, Charlie Watts is great at what the Rolling Stones need. They need a solid drummer. They don't need somebody going off into Never Never Land. Okay, they need a solid drummer. The Beatles went further. They were much more diverse in what they did, creative, in my opinion. And Rolling Stones fans, don't even bother with the comments, please. Okay, I understand, but I hope you see what I'm saying. The Beatles really went in and did a lot of experimentation, both in the studio and everything. Ringo Starr, again, not the best drummer in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but very good for the Beatles. He had a unique style. It was very simple, like Charlie Watts. He kept a wonderful beat. Please Please Me, last night I said these words to my girl. I knew I'd never even try, girl. Do 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 do, come on, come on, come on, come on. Please please me, oh yeah, like I please you. Wow, wow, and the harmonica, right? Okay, that's really simple, but he's got those triplets down pat. Okay, bum 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 bum. That's kind of a diddle, not quite. It's more of a single stick, but it's close. Okay, Ringo Starr was great at that stuff. He had a real groove to him, almost a funkiness. When he got down to some of their slower songs, it was just, I don't know if you can hear my bass drum. He just had this vibe to him that was perfect for the Beatles. And of course he replaced their drummer that they had when they first were starting to become famous, ostensibly because Pete Best wasn't good enough. I don't know what the real story is there, another story. But Ringo Starr did a great job for that, and some of his stuff was really clever. It was wonderful. Oh yeah, alright. Actually, I think that was Paul McCartney playing drums on that song, so what am I talking about? But he pretty much was kind of copying what Ringo did, the end at the end of Abbey Road. Double stops right there. The end. The end. So Ringo was great at that, and frankly McCartney's pretty good at that as well. McCartney played drums on some of the Beatles songs. So let's see, let's move on. Keith Moon, okay, one of my big influences from the Who. Keith Moon came out of the old surf scene, and the surf scene was all about energy and speed. So it was very much like, that kind of thing. And he was fast. He was really fast. Keith Moon did single sticking on almost everything. From what I can tell, I'm not even sure if he was capable of doing a diddle. Or he didn't have stick control in the sense of he was a guy who would try to hit with his right and scoot over to this crash cymbal. And that's why he's always in motion. He just looks like a madman, and no matter what Jim Henson says, Animal in the Muppet Show had to have been based on Keith Moon. There's no way around it. Keith Moon was an animal. And now it's starting to get really warm, so I'm starting to sweat again. This fan isn't doing the job. Keith Moon, that was his style, was just to be very, very fast. But he did a lot of runs where he would, he'd do what's essentially a single stroke drum roll, but he would do it down the drums, down the toms. So like on the Quadrophenia album, he's just always doing this kind of thing. Keith Moon was great, but he wasn't the greatest drummer ever. He was perfect for that band. And you can tell because when Keith Moon died, The Who replaced him with Kenny Jones, who was a very good drummer as far as just your typical, kind of classic rock drummer. He was very good, very skilled, very talented. But it wasn't quite right for The Who. Although I do think their later albums with him, especially their last one, It's Hard, is a very, very good album. By that time, I think they kind of changed a bit and assimilated Kenny Jones, and they had changed the Who. The It's Hard does not sound like Who's Next, let's put it that way, okay? What it sounds like was very, very good, but it was tailored more toward the drumming style of Kenny Jones. And that's why they didn't sound as much like the Who on that album. Sort of, kind of. I mean, they did, but anyway, not to get into that. The next one would be John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. And John Bonham, another madman behind the Skins. Okay? Now, something that he did all the time, which is very influential, goes to what I was telling you about these techniques, okay? So, if you're doing, let's say you do a single stroke fours, like I was just showing you with the triplets, you know. Okay, now, da 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 da. Let's say instead of doing 4 on the same drum, let's say you do 1 on one drum, 1 on a different drum, and then 2 bass drums. Whether you're using a single pedal, you can use a single pedal and just go boom boom like that, or you can have 2 bass drum pedals and go boom boom. Alright? Now John Bonham had 1 pedal. He was fast. His foot was fast. And he could do these diddles with 1 foot. He could go easily with 1 foot. Didun, 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 didun. If you don't believe me, listen to their very first recorded song, Good Times, Bad Times. In the days of my youth, I was told what it means to be a man. You know, I can't do it in the car. I can't play bass drum in here, but doom doo 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 ka ka. Dooga 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 doo doo doo. Now I've reached that age, and then he goes into that doom doom doo doo with the bass drum. Ba-dum 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 ka. You know, that was an amazing technique back then, and he was so forceful with it. He was so confident and in your face. Ginger Baker, another fantastic drummer of that vein with Cream, back in that era. There were some phenomenal drummers like that back then. Bonham was not the only one. He was perfect for Led Zeppelin. But what he would do often is, like, let's say you take a triplet, and instead of going, you know, dot dot dot, 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 3. Instead of doing that, let's say you hit 1 drum, then the other, then the bass drum. Like that. And if you speed it up, speed it up some more. Alright, what you can get when you really speed it up is essentially a drum roll. Like that. And if you do doubles down there, you can get 4. 1 2 3 4. So you can get like you can get something like that going. That's what John Bonham did a lot of. And, you know, I'm not going to say it was innovative. I don't think anything's innovative anymore. I mean, people from the very beginning just go out and there's masters of the craft. Even Eddie Van Halen, he's known for, you know, the hammer-on. He's known for that. There was a dude back in the 60s, there's a video on YouTube on acoustic guitar doing that. Eddie Van Halen did not invent that. He popularized it, and he was great at it. He expanded it. And that's kind of what Bonham was doing. There were blues and jazz drummers who had already been doing that kind of thing, but that's who he learned from. So that's John Bonham. Very heavy, in-your-face, confident. The confidence was key. He knew he was good, and that was that. But he wasn't, you know, well, I don't know how he was in real life, but he didn't come across as pretentious. He was confident because he was that good, and he did the job like a professional would do. Okay, the professionals I work with in my job are not nearly as professional as many of the musicians I've seen in these really good bands who do what they have to do. And unfortunately, Keith Moon was not one of them. He was pretty unprofessional. He had to relearn how to play drums every time they did an album because he was out drinking so much in between, he lost all his skill. But John Bonham was just a consummate professional, that kind of thing. Another one along those lines is the one who most people my age would look at as, whether you like their band or not, as, quote, the greatest drummer ever, which isn't true, but, you know, that's kind of the way it goes. I'm talking, of course, about, if there's any drummers out there, you just said it. You just said it, right? You know who I'm talking about. The rock drummer who influenced everybody. The progressive rock drummer who influenced everybody. No, not Carl Palmer. Great drummer. Neil Peart from Rush. Neil Peart from Rush. He was probably my biggest influence early on when I was playing drums, although he's not as much anymore. He's actually, I don't see him as being as good as I did back then, but he is great. He is, and he's perfect for the band. Perfect. And he is a consummate professional. He's always trying to improve his skill and his craft, and he did. What he did was perfect. He was the right guy for the job. He was an extraordinary skill. He was better than average, without a doubt. But, you know, you look at things like Tom Sawyer, where everyone thinks that little solo in the middle is so hard. It isn't that hard. You know, dun 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 dun, dun 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 dun, which is just the bottom thing, right? Bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Though his mind is not for rent. You know, it's just a combination of the stuff I've been telling you about here. But that's kind of my point with this video, is to let you know that what drummers do is they master these techniques and these rudiments, and they put them together, and they do it with their own vibe, their own groove, their own heart and soul. I see Neil Peart is being pretty stiff these days, but the fact is, again, he's perfect for Rush. I wouldn't want to see anyone else doing it. Some of the stuff he did was absolutely amazing, really, truly. That breakdown, that kind of jazzy breakdown in Free Will, you know, I can't even play it really, but the doom doom da doom 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 da doom 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 da doom doom doom, when he's doing the bass solo, Geddy, bump bump. Okay, here we are. I'm back 1 hour later. You know what happened? The camera overheated. It's safe for human beings, according to the Minnesota Department of Health's behavior. National Weather Service has nothing to say about it for homeless people. I was in here sweating bullets. I had to go in and wet my hair down, take the hat off to try to cool down, but the camera overheated and it stopped working. I don't know when, so I'm sorry, I don't know where this left off. I'll have to do some clever editing, I guess. But let me proceed while I still can. I have it plugged in right now, and that may introduce some buzzing sound in the background while it's plugged in. I'll unplug it before I go to the radio and use up the battery for that, because that will definitely create a lot of noise if I have the stereo running while it's plugged in there. By the way, the latest thing to go out of the things that I own is the power inverter that I use. I plug into the car lighter so that I can power up, plug things in, you know, like my computer, charging this camera, things like that. A new one is $30, and the new one does not have two plugs and a USB. It only has one plug and two USBs. I don't need USBs, I need the plugs. So I don't know what to do, because this thing's been really good for about 2 years, but the cord's just been, you know, it has the cord at the end, and it's just been shoved around in here so much it's shorted out. Anyway, back to drums. Let's see, we got through John Bonham, Keith Moon, Neil Peart. So there's a lot of other drummers who I think are fantastic, and every drummer has their own set of people who they think are fantastic. You know, if you're getting into kind of grooves, Level 42 with Phil Gould, you know, he was very much, you know, lessons in love, I'll wait till you return. I can't really bounce in here. That doesn't sound like a cymbal at all, does it? You know, it's just got a real groove going. Phil Gould, Level 42, well worth checking out. Stuart Copeland with The Police, very tight, snappy drummer. You know, his stuff, very clever too, but like just synchronous, you know. just the stuff he does is just amazing. Stuart Copeland, The Police. There's a lot of drummers who I really like, and you know, again, have they found the right band is the question. You know, I'm not even going to get into it. If I start listing out drummers, we'll spend all day on that. Fantastic drummers, but of course you have to go back to the old schools, the Gene Krupas and the Buddy Riches. Buddy Rich appears to have been one of the worst human beings who's ever lived, or certainly appears that way. Not a nicest guy, not a great guy to tour with, but man, he could drum. I'll say that. So the last thing I'll say before I get into just some sound examples in the stereo is this. Let me turn this a bit, see if I can get that background to be less white. It didn't work, did it? Styles of music. You know, I wrote down a few here. Where are my glasses? You know, of course, rock and roll. Rock and roll is going to be, a lot of it's in 4/4 time, just straightforward 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes, you know, they'll have ballads, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6/8 time, things like that. I went over Surf with Keith Moon. It's just all about speed and energy, just you know, that kind of thing. Jazz is tough. Not only is it total improvisation, but you got to know your stuff. And a good jazz player are among the best drummers out there. Unfortunately, I can't stand jazz. I just hate it. It reminds me of NPR. You know, this pretentious stuff. I don't want anything to do with jazz, but the players of jazz are fantastic musicians as a rule, and they're pretty brave to go out there and try to improvise. You got to know your theory. You got to know a lot of stuff. So jazz is going to be just, it's kind of funky, but it's fast. It has a lot of the stick control. Stick control is crucial. You know, they're just all over the place. I hate the music, but man, do I appreciate the musicians. How about that? Funk, you know, Parliament, even disco to some extent was funky. Now it was very beat. You know, disco is just do 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 do. That's the way like it. You know, just on the cymbal, hi-hat, a lot of hi-hat. Very much 4/4 time for the most part. But it has a funkiness to it, and of course funk just adds a little more to it. You know, just some accents and some feel and groove to it. It's not as mechanical. Disco is very much a precursor to what we have with the drum machine based music in the 90s and today, which I'll leave for another time. Thrash, metal, death metal, goth metal, I can't even remember what you call Melvins, like sludge, I think they call it. There's some metal drummers out there who are absolutely fantastic. They just make my brain explode when I think about what they're doing with. They can make their bass drum go that fast, which I can't even get my hands to go that fast for very long. So you know, the metal drummers, a lot of it's up here is just kind of like, let me see if I tone this down. So that's kind of thrashy there. You know, regardless of what you think about the bands and what they sing about and everything, I mean, the fact is, Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, fantastic bands. Can't stomach Metallica. Ever since Lars went in front of Congress and whined and moaned about people stealing his money, Lars, who is not one of the best drummers in the world to begin with. This guy is so lucky he's not working in a gas station at age 50 or 60. This guy is the most fortunate guy in the world, and he goes in front of Congress and complains about Napster, right? People are stealing my art. I'm living in a freaking car and this guy's worried about I mean, the audacity of these people. Anyway, this is a happy video, so I'm not going to talk about Lars. I'll just say that after he did that, I literally could never listen to Metallica again without wanting to vomit. It was the most sickening thing I've ever... I will tell you why. I will tell you why, actually. It's a little diversion. I'm sorry about this, but I grew up with that kind of music, and Metallica was a big influence on me back in the Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets era, the Black Album. Then they came out with And Justice for All, which is probably the worst mastered album ever made. It's horrifying. I mean, it's the EQ on that is just an abomination. But they're singing about things, you know, justice. And it was influential on me as I was past teenager. I was kind of starting college then. And it influenced me. A lot of the reason I do what I do, things I told you about in the last couple videos where I told you I gave up my life to write a book and try to warn people about information gathering and sales and the weaponization of information. The things I have done to try to fight against corruption, put my neck on the line and got it cut off every time because I'm doing it alone. One of the things that inspired me toward that kind of end was the album And Justice for All by Metallica. And then Lars goes in front of Congress and complains when the natural course of technology says, we've got automobiles now, the horse and buggy is obsolete. So Napster comes along and says, we've got MP3s now, the record industry is obsolete, but Lars doesn't want that. He wants the money. Show him the money, the money, the money, the money. So he goes in front of Congress and whines and cries and moans, man, they're taking my heart. And I'm living in a car and he's got something to complain about. That's why I want to vomit when I think of Metallica. Let's move on to another topic. There's a lot of other varieties of metal and thrash. You know, how you define which is which, I don't know. But now I would like to unplug this thing and get into some of the music, except that I'm being stared at by some bearded fellas who, one of them looks like Lennon, and I don't mean John Lennon. I mean the Soviet Union Lennon. This is really kind of spooky. Let's see, just make sure the door's locked here. And I'm going to go on and unplug this, and I'm going to put on some music. The first song, I know what it is, then I'm just going to rifle through my music collection and see what I come up with and what I can tell you. I obviously can't really play the stuff in here. So let me unplug this thing here. There we go. Alright, so now it shouldn't buzz when I turn on the stereo. Okay, the first song you're going to hear is Rift by Fish. John Fishman on drums. Amazing. In terms of that independence, what I'm talking about, having the four limbs, just amazing. Is this thing on? Okay, it is. Listen to that. Listen, he's got a cowbell going on one. He's got some stick thing going. His feet are doing the doon, da-doon, 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 da-doon. Listen to that.
In the moments my thoughts were adrift and coasting in Paris,
the cowbell,
through which I could spy several glimpses beneath of the darkness the light from above could not reach.
I mean, he has totally different things going on with his hands and his feet. His feet are kind of working together, but and as you go through that song, it's like a 7-minute song with a 6.5-minute guitar solo. Fantastic song. The stuff he does in there is absolutely amazing. But let's see what else we can find. Let's see. Oh, here. It's just amazing. And listen to one thing with this. Remember what I said about the rhythm section? Listen to how tight the drum is with the bass player here.
To the top of the shelf, I struggled with destiny up on the ledge, and gasped when defeated he slipped off the edge. Silence contagious and
now they're doing totally different things. The drummer's going wild with this. I play it like which isn't the way he's playing it at all, but it's the best I can do to get close to it. The bass player is going do 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 do. So they're doing totally different things, but they're tight on together as a rhythm section. And that's what the rhythm section is supposed to do, so that this guitar solo can go, and so that the keyboards can go wailing, and that guy can sing so beautifully. Really neat lyrics to this song too. Let's see what else we got. There you go, the Rolling Stones. There's Charlie Watts. Just listen to that. Solid. just like a metronome, okay? And that's what Charlie Watts does, and he does it really, really well. In that sense, he is a, quote, great drummer for the Rolling Stones. If you put him in Rush, probably not, but that's okay. And that's what I'm saying to drummers out there. Find your niche, find your band, and you will be a great drummer. All right, just don't try to overextend yourself beyond what you're capable of, and augment the band. What else we got? Here's level 42. Level 42, Phil Gould I was telling you about. Listen to this grooving this guy does. Whoops, he doesn't do it there. And then the bass comes in. The drums and the bass, rhythm section. But Phil Gould, I mean, I'm not going to play the whole song, but Phil Gould just gets in there, he puts in these fills, these wonderful fills. Just fantastic stuff. Okay, there's some early Rush. This is before they had Neil Peart. It's the one album they did with their former drummer, who was a perfectly capable drummer. He did a great job on this album, but a very different style than Neil Peart. It was much more straight up rock and roll. Let's see if I can find it. Like, yeah, like this. You know, just straightforward rock. And that's what's really good for this album, before they had Neil Peart writing this more complicated music. What's next? Something very quiet. It's always a quiet song that starts out these albums on my radio. Alright. Oh, Incubus. You know, this is just a matter of just going wild. Like I said, drums is great exercise. Another quiet one, wow. Okay, this might be kind of grungy, you might call it, but very good. That kind of thing. You know, so he's just got kind of a groove, got some lick going there. That's Christian rock, Sometimes Sunday. Another quiet one, really? Ooh, okay. Roxy Music. Oh, this has a long intro though. Let me see if I can get through it here. Roxy Music, Siren, one of the greatest albums ever made. Listen to this. See, notice? Dot, dot, dot. You gotta hit it twice. You can bring it over if you want. If it serves your purposes, you can come over for the dot-dot like that instead of hitting it with the same hand. It has a bit different tone to it, but just a real incredibly solid yet soulful groove to this song. Alright, what else we got? It's kind of thrash. Okay, Anthrax. Listen to this. This guy's wailing on the snare drum here. I'm not doing it right. Okay, so notice how the bass drum, boom, 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 on the drums. All right. So the bass drum's doing this do 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 thing, which is a you know, it's kind of a lick. It's something you would normally do with your hands. He's doing it with his feet while he's just doing a straight up 4/4 beat here. I can't play the bass drum in a car. Darn it. It's a great song. Anthrax has some great stuff. So here's some nice groove, and this is rock and roll, but it's kind of progressive. This is the soundtrack of our lives. But listen to that. He's got some... He's doing what's called a rim shot. He's doing a rim shot. That's where you take the stick and you lay it across the rim of your snare drum and you just lift it and you get that clicking sound. And then he's got the bass drum emphasizing boom, 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 boom. So he's just putting all these things together, you know, the things I talked about in the first video. What else we got? Oh, beautiful. I won't get into this. This isn't independent, but beautiful, beautiful album. Daniel Amos. Very straightforward. It's kind of new wave-ish. Thomas Dolby kind of. So there you go, you got a cowbell going. So he's using the cowbell as a ride instead of a cymbal, which is, you know, something else you can do if it sounds right. What else we got? And by the way, if this video ends, it's because the camera either overheated or the battery went out. I can't do much about it. Spirit, good old 60s rock. Let's see here. Actually, there's something here that's worth listening to, if I can find it. Yeah, this one. Listen to what he's doing. He's hitting the hi-hat. Boom, 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 snare, hat, 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 boom, snare, hat, 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 bass, snare. See? I mean, he just came up with this really simple thing. Dot, 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 boom, snare. Boom, boom. And that creates its own groove. It drives the song in a different way than if he were going dun 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 dun. That has a totally different feel than what he's doing. It makes the song feel slower and more morose, which is what the lyrics are about. Okay? That Spirit, the 60s group, with Jay Ferguson. Ooh, good stuff there. I've got so much good stuff on this car stereo. I'm sure this will be the next thing to go out. Sticks. There's the Police. Okay, let's get some Stuart Copeland. Listen to that. Listen to what he's doing with this hi-hat.
Don't tell the director I said so. But all you say just forget.
Snare. Okay, I'm back again for take umpteen. The camera keeps shutting down from the heat. I drove into the shade. It's now several hours after the last time I recorded. I think I better just shut this video down. But I wanted to say I really hope that it was edifying for you. I hope you got something out of it. Hope it was a little funner than my usual videos, which regrettably have to be what they are. This is the kind of thing I would be doing all the time if I could, and it was fun. I hope you enjoyed it too, and I hope next time you watch some drummers you'll you know, think a little more about what it is they're doing, have a little more appreciation for them. Alright, thanks so much for watching, and I really appreciate you being on my channel. Thanks so much.